Welcome to the 8th interview in the Empires and Puzzles Books interview series. This project has been going extremely well, and I am really grateful for the interest in the community and the players who are willing to chat with us and share a behind the scenes look at how they're viewing the game and their strategies. Today, I had the opportunity to sit down with one of the most analytical minds in the game, a self proclaimed hyper strategist, the one, the only. Hello, everyone. Sorry to interrupt this broadcast, but unfortunately, I had a technical snafu, and this video has actually been re-uploaded. So I've been using Zoom meetings to conduct these interviews, and unfortunately, I don't know if it's because of the sheer size of the video or what, but the file got corrupted with Mr. Spock and myself. So I purchased a Repair It software to fix it, and it salvaged the video, and that was what I originally uploaded. But unfortunately, it kind of repeated itself a few times. There was like it kind of skipped, like it was not ideal. And I know that caused some concern. It was not smooth listening. So what I did here is I took that video and deleted the audio track and added clean audio. Zoom gives a separate file of the audio of a meeting. So that is included here. So we have the slightly restored video with the clean audio. So basically what that means is our mouths and the words are not going to line up perfectly always as the video skips around a little bit. But if you're just listening to this like a podcast, it should be perfect and you won't notice anything. For everyone else, just if you can be a little patient and tolerate that our mouths and words are not lining up perfectly, that'll be greatly appreciated. This was just such an important and valuable conversation with a real contributor to the community. I just did not want to lose this interview. So hope you can forgive me for this. Technology is not perfect, but I do what I can with it. So enough of me. Enjoy the video. All right, welcome everyone to another Empires and Puzzles Books interview video. So we have a very special guest here today. I assume we're sharing some viewership since we're both on YouTube and putting out sometimes things in agreement, sometimes in disagreement. But either way, we're both enjoying our game the way we play it. So we have the one and only Mr. Spock. So welcome, Mr. Spock.
Thank you. Yeah, glad to be here.
Yeah, I appreciate, and I'm sure everyone else does, appreciates your time in coming forward in this manner. We get to hear a lot from you, obviously, through your channel, but hopefully the dialogue today is a little different than how you're kind of putting yourself out there. So if we can, let's go ahead and start with Mr. Spock. Like, what's the history of your screen name? Where does that come from?
Yeah, so it's actually a funny nickname that I got from an ex-girlfriend due to just the logical nature of approaching things. And I think it really annoyed her sometimes. It's a quality that I like about myself because I consider myself a level-headed and analytical person. So it was one of those things where, you know, you realize later you're in a relationship that's not the right relationship. And so what was meant to be sort of an insult became a compliment to myself. So when I was thinking of I don't really remember deciding on that for this channel, but it had been a sort of screen name I'd been kicking around in various fashions over time, and was like, yeah, I guess I'll go with that. But
Interesting.
I didn't really plan for the channel to be what it became. You know, more about that later. But yeah,
It's taken on a life of its own, I guess.
it has. Yeah.
And you actually have already told us everything we know about. You told us everything we need to know about her when you said she's an ex. So
Yeah.
that summed up the entire story right there. And I can appreciate the analytical nature of things. I tend to overthink things. In fact, when I was in college, I used to have this goofy phrase that I would say is, I said, I overthink everything. Just think about it. So it's just, you know, you see things and you connect them. Which is actually probably a good segue into the first topic I wanted to talk to you about. You are the only person that I've seen or heard talk about the game and refer to hyper strategizing. And I intuitively know what you mean by that, but I think it's an opportunity for you to kind of explain to everyone what you mean when you're saying you're hyper strategizing.
Yeah, it's funny. I don't actually remember saying that. There's one of my favorite things about the YouTube channel is going in and looking at the comments later. And then it's often in my war videos, people will quote something that I supposedly said. I'm like, and it's usually something funny, which I enjoy. But it's interesting how you just kind of get talking and you don't really
Hmm.
remember all the things you say, but it's fun when people point it out later. Um, so yeah, I don't remember using that phrase, but and this sort of connects with you talking about overthinking, where I think that's sort of in the eye of the beholder, where to me that's the appropriate level of thinking, and that's kind of the space that I like to occupy when I'm thinking about stuff. And if there are people that prefer to, make decisions in a simpler fashion, then that looks like overthinking, but that's sort of where that's my sweet spot.
Right.
um, so yeah, when I think about this game, and this kind of connects to something else we can talk about, there's kind of two main schools of thought, which are it's all luck and it's totally dependent on the boards, and there's nothing you can do to control it. Or the space that I occupy, which is there will always be a luck element to it, but you can minimize how much impact luck has over the outcomes of your games in whatever area we're talking about in Empires and Puzzles by approaching things thoughtfully. And
Mhm.
that's sort of what that means to me, is like not not being willing to accept that it's just luck, and trying to drill into every aspect that I can to make key decisions that can impact the outcome of things. So that's kind of where it comes from in my own head.
Yeah, and I can appreciate you saying that. Hey, I say things sometimes I don't remember exactly where that phrase came from. I can narrow it down for you. It was during your winning streaks, when you had that long winning streak of war when you kept one-shotting.
Yeah.
And it was somewhere in there. It was at the beginning of one of the videos, I think, and you made a comment about that you're really getting into this hyper strategization and really kind of overthinking the specials and how they work. I think
Yeah.
you were getting into the synergy between your heroes and the enemies.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I do remember that actually now, and I'm really glad that you remember that and brought that up, because that totally jogged my memory. But yeah, that's where I was just, leaning towards what some people might think of as overthinking, and being like, all right, here's the situation. What can I do to have this work in my favor? And that ended up, I can't remember exactly how much it was. I can't remember how much that streak was, but there was a lot of people being like, "Oh, you're just attacking easy targets," or like, "Try that in a top 10 alliance and that won't work," and all this kind of stuff. And it's not like I was attacking 4,200 team power teams. Like, they're still very high level
mhm.
teams, maybe not as hard as in a top 10 alliance, but I kind of don't let that stuff get to me. And
Sure.
people are always going to want to try to trivialize things that happen, but to me it was significant.
Sure. I mean, the reality is, and I think we both know this as YouTube personalities, that if you put it out there, they will complain.
Yeah.
So there's always somebody who's going to be a naysayer or
Yeah.
poke at something. Um, by chance, and I'm going to say back in the day because it was back in the day for me. Did you ever play the board game Axis and Allies?
No, and I actually don't know the name of it either.
All right. Well, if you've ever played Risk, it's like Risk on crack. It's a much more intensive strategy board game centered around World War II. Well, back in college, a friend of mine and I used to play that. And there was, to use your phrase, hyper strategizing. I mean, you really had to plan everything you wanted to plan. But when it
Mhm.
was actually your turn, in a very Dungeons and Dragons kind of way, you had to roll dice. So there was still an RNG. There was a factor of luck that was in it.
Yeah.
And my good friend that I played with always said that the whole game was about increasing your luck, which is
Mm.
actually why the first book I wrote on Empires and Puzzles, I called it Increasing Your Luck, because
Mhm.
I'm with you. It's all about, I mean, ultimately at the end of the day, RNG is going to do what it is. We got to play the tiles we're dealt, but
Yeah.
everything up to that point is decision making, thousands
Yeah.
of decisions.
And even how you manipulate the board to make something more that you want, there's a phrase, it's kind of fun how small this community is, because like when I was first starting out, and what sort of led to my channel, I was in search of information. I was playing this
Mm.
game, and I saw it in an ad one day, thought it looked really simple. I was like, oh, that looks kind of fun. It's sort of the same mechanic as Bejeweled or Candy Crush, but like little guys come out of the matches when you make them and they attack the other people. And wasn't had no idea what I was getting myself into. And it turned into, a lot more depth, and probably the longest game I've played. Most console games, you play them for a couple months, you beat them, and you sort of move on to the next. Um, but one of the things I came across was from Nittany Lion Roar's channel when he was Nittany Lion Roar, and he mentioned a phrase that always stuck with me that just kind of made intuitive sense. Which, oh man, what was it now? I think he said playing the odds, maybe,
Mhm.
which is like, all right, if I make this match, I have a 40% chance of making an on-color diamond. And like,
Mhm.
well, if I don't try it, it won't happen, you know? And
Sure.
sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But that's kind of how it boils down in this game to me, and why it's so important to understand things like, all right, if I make this 4 match, one tile's going to ghost, three are going to hit this hero and kill them, and I know that will be enough mana to charge this hero who can do this. And like, if you get into all that, it can drastically change the outcome of things. And I've been on the receiving end of that many
Sure.
times.
And I always joke about how much when we were in school, everybody hated math word problems. And now this is actually just a giant, like you were just phrasing it, it is a giant word problem,
Yeah.
you know. Uh, but there is something to be said for the amount of time and energy put in even before the tiles hit the board. You know, I've had people criticize challenge event videos I put up where I got high score or Titan high score hits, and people are like, oh well, it's just easy. You know, you have the tiles are just there and you make it so easy. And it's like, but they don't see the decision making in the specific troops with the specific heroes, the emblem path. I mean,
Yeah.
there's so many decisions that are made before you even get to those tiles.
Hmm.
And then board manipulation is a whole nother ball of wax. So clearly
Yeah.
you're a believer that the boards are rigged.
You know, it's funny. I've never ever been a superstitious person, and this game brings that out in the most rational people, because, you know, like from the summoning methods, all this kind of stuff. And I've kind of delved into that in sort of a satirical way at times as well. But all these things, you're like, doesn't hurt to try it. Why not? Why, you know? And it's
Sure.
just really funny how that's happened. So in terms of the boards, I don't know. I think a big problem is that there's a lot of distrust for the company, and they could do a lot more to improve that. And that's always been a disappointing thing for me. But I think people start to believe, oh, they're just screwing me over because I stopped spending money, or, you know, there's all these tales you can tell yourself because of the context that this is all happening within, you know. But yeah, it is sort of funny how it brings that out in even the most um, mathematical people.
Yeah, and that's why that's actually one of the things that got me started on research in the game and started documenting things, because people will say, you know, XYZ is a fact, and it's not, it's a feeling. And then you can
Hmm.
prove that rationally just by starting to document things and look at the data and get a better
Yeah,
understanding of what's actually going on. That's
yeah,
you know, twice now I've done um, you know, I'm a predominant mono player, at least on 5 stars, and I have twice done 2 large scale starting board documentations, and both times the results were the same. The RNG is actually near perfect as far as coming out over 100 plus games, that you'll have 20% of the tiles will be of each color, which is exactly where it should fall.
yeah.
But that confirmation bias, man, that's a hard one to shake.
It's really, yeah. Now, I remember seeing one of those videos, and I don't watch a ton of Empires and Puzzles content just because having a channel takes a lot of time.
Mhm.
And I'm approaching it even more thoughtfully now, and like have a publishing calendar and all this kind of stuff to keep track of videos I've made and everything. And so I remember coming across one of your videos. The first one I ever saw of yours was get like 100 emblems per month or X amount of
Mhm.
emblems per month. And I was like, oh, that's pretty good. And then I saw one that you did about where you logged every starting tile on like 300 boards. And I was like, damn, that took a long time. And I actually shared that video on my channel because I was like, this person put a huge amount of time and effort into creating this resource. And I was like, I had, you know, more subscribers at the time, and was like, oh, I think more people should see this. Like this, I was like, I've never
Oh,
taken on an endeavor like that. And that does, you know, speak to some of the biggest suspicions about the game.
sure. Yeah, and I appreciate you acknowledging that and remembering that the 350 board one was actually the second one, because people criticized that 100 boards wasn't enough.
Oh
It's like
gosh.
35 tiles on a starting board, 100 boards, that's 3,500 data points,
Yeah.
was clearly not enough. And then of course I did 250 and people, or 350, and people said that wasn't enough. Like they'll never be satisfied.
Yeah. I
And
think,
the thing, Go ahead.
I was going to say, I think we're probably similar in that sense where like, for some reason, people still, like if I was in your position, people still doubting it. I'm like, man, how can I prove this? And it's like,
Right.
sometimes you just got to let it go because some people, no matter what you do, are not going to come on board with
Sure.
that. They think
Sure.
what they think, they're not open to more.
Yep.
Um, but it seems like we're similar in that sense where I'm like, no, 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 I got to work harder.
Yeah, and the thing that was interesting to me when I was plotting that data, because I obviously didn't just play 350 games. It took, a period of days to document every starting board, and it was raids only. What was interesting to me is I had the Excel set up to automatically calculate the percentages of which tiles were showing up.
Mm,
And as you can imagine, if you do 10 boards, it's skewed, right? Because in 10 boards,
mhm.
you might have a bunch of red or a bunch of blue. But
Yeah,
as you're adding on dozens of games and then hundreds of games, that the curve flattens out for all of the colors.
yeah.
Excuse me. And you end up having this near 20% match on all of them. Sorry
Hmm.
about that. My phone's going off here.
That's all right.
So,
That's actually something I've always been curious about too, is when they talk about the summoning odds, because that makes sense. Over enough time, you see the trend clearly once all the outliers and those things are lost in the abundance of other data. And I've thought about that with the summoning odds, where they're like, all right, you have a 1% chance, and I really wonder, like, if there's some legal thing they have to approach with that to say like, oh yeah, after 100,000 polls, you'll see these odds. Or like, I'm very curious what that, if they have any control over what that duration is, or if, like, because they have to give out at that level, otherwise it's false advertising, but
right.
maybe they can control what that sample size needs to be before those odds are kind of seen. Because we see those crazy polls where you do a 30 poll and you get 7 legendaries, and then
Mm-hmm.
you do 500 polls and you get nothing,
Nothing. Yeah. Which uh, realistically is probably how it works with a slot machine, right? Like you go into a
Mm,
casino and somebody, has dumb luck and wins three pretty big jackpots in a row while everybody else is losing around them.
yeah.
Uh, and I'm not aware if there is, and I don't know how there would be with it being an international game, any kind of regulating body to ensure that there is truth in advertising. I
Yeah.
know I know in the States slot machines are regulated that, and people don't get this even with slot machines. They're regulated, I think it's 84%. They have to give back 84% of the cash they take in. But
Mhm.
what people don't realize is the casino has the flexibility to have the machine closest to the door giving out 95%. So it's dinging and getting people to come into the casino, while the ones that are deeper in the casino are giving 50%. As
Yeah.
long as over the casino, if they're giving 84% of the money back they're getting from slots, they're legally okay. And
Interesting.
and nobody quote me on those numbers. It's the
Yeah.
the concept is what I'm getting at, is that it is regulated that they have to give so much back.
Yeah.
But with this, I don't know that there is. I Now I'm a heavy puller. Obviously, I'm a pay to play, and I chase heroes. And I will always argue that the percentage chance on hero of the month is either too great or it's inaccurate, and they just give them out too much.
Hmm.
And that to me accentuates problems when we have an overpowered hero. And I don't necessarily need to get into a whole buff nerf conversation, but
So, question for you: do you think Heroes of the Month are the slot machine at the door?
on some level,
Maybe it's just that across all the legendaries they're offering, it needs to be X percent, or I don't know if it needs to be anything, but maybe that's the one where they inflate that number a little bit. I don't know. They do give a specific number for it, but
yeah,
it
it's
makes
with
you wonder.
1.3%. And
Yeah,
the challenge is it's 1.3% on every summons for the month.
yeah,
So there's so many chances to get it. I mean, the reality is this, and I can say this from a place of fact, at least from my own game experience. If you spend enough, you will get Hero of the Month. I've never not gotten Hero of the Month. And at
mm,
the rate I summons, I usually end up with between 8 and 12 or more sometimes. So it is possible. Even this morning, I was really interested in getting Yang Mei. Uh, and I probably did 100 summons to get her, but I got her. Like it's not like she was unattainable. And just me being me, and I'm trying to get the test drive videos out. I wanted to get it today so I could put it up.
mm,
But the reality is, I'll probably end up getting 5 or 6 more of her by the end of the month,
yeah,
depending on what heroes are featured and if I'm chasing anybody.
yeah.
So, what is your summon? Like, how many summons do you do a month?
Um, I don't really keep track of it, and it's changed a lot over time. There hasn't been one. guiding number or budget the whole time. I'm kind of at a point now where like I'm really slow to decide who I want to ascend.
Hmm.
And, I'm getting close to like, I think I have 17 tabards or 16 tabards and like 15 or 16 darts. And I'm like, all right, I got to make some decisions here because it's not like I don't have plenty of choices. But I'm at a point where I'm like, all right, I have a lot of good teams. I don't want to max someone just to max them because you know how like if I were to choose based on the purple options I have now, they're heroes that, plenty of people would like to have, but it's not necessarily the ones that feel like they would fit my teams or my style in a way that I would be like, oh, I'm so glad I did that. Um, so I'm like, oh, I really want Lapiota and Alfreich. So I'm kind of holding off on tabards to see if that can happen.
Hmm.
But it's, yeah. So it's changed over time. I started off free to play. And now it's reaching the end of that too, where I'm like the value of my dollar has gone down because there's so much that I can get that's just irrelevant to me, to the point that you just laugh when you get a season 1 5-star and you're like, feed them away or whatever, which just kills a lot of people. And I remember early on watching and someone feeding away Wilbur, and I was like, oh man, I want Wilbur so bad. I can't, So your perspective changes over time, but it's kind of gotten to the point for me where the value of money spent has decreased significantly because there's so many duplicates I can get that have zero value to me. There's no trade-in system. So I'm kind of like, I like really occupying the space where input in is still giving the max amount of reward. And as that starts to level off, I get less interested because it just doesn't feel efficient. So yeah, it varies a lot from month to month. I had done some tavern pulls in the past and, sometimes would buy that $30 30 pull kind of thing. And I'm like, there's almost no one I want in here except for Frida and Evelyn. And my chances of getting those are abysmally low. And you'll never get them if you don't try. But I'm like, chances are I just throw my money away and, get Kunchin or something who I don't want at all. And I'm like, cool, okay.
Yep. And that's another thing I think people don't realize, that the published, and depending on the summons now, but something like Taverns of Legend, the published odds, although they don't change month to month, they actually get worse because they add heroes in.
Yeah,
So if you wanted, like you said, Frida or Evelyn, your chances of getting them now is worse than it was 2 months ago, which was worse than it was 2 months before that. And
yeah,
it's the same thing if you chase heroes. I noticed this in season 3 and now in season 4. You have that one opportunity when they're released, and I hate to even say 1% chance divided by 2 or 3 featured heroes is your best odds.
yeah,
But the next month you're now screwed because that the hero you wanted is now in a pile with another dozen, and it's less than a percent divided. Well, I guess it's 1.5% divided by 12, which is worse than 1% divided by 3.
yeah. I know, looking at season 3, for example, when I've always, like I said, been on this point of wanting to be at that maximum point of efficiency, like from studying for school to, everything I can think of. I like my effort to have maximum payoff and to find that sweet spot. Um, and when Alfred came out, I was like, I don't think I'm going to pull this month because like I don't really want a very slow hero, and maybe she wouldn't have been right for me at that time because she's not a hero you bring on every team.
Mhm.
But I'm at the point where I have, I mean, which is still a small number for some of these other guys and yourself included. I've got maybe almost 40 maxed 5-stars,
Mhm.
but I've chosen very carefully. Like from the very first one I maxed, I was like, I got to make this count. So I didn't fall into that position of being in so early that I have, a max season 1 of every kind. In fact, the only season 1 heroes I've maxed are ones that have costumes, and so I've been really careful about that. But I'm at a point now where like I would max Alfred just to use in rush attack because it seems like it would be that fun, and like I've got plenty of heroes that I can make those decisions of heroes that I'll use less frequently.
I'll tell
Like I
you.
just have, oh, one more thing. I
Yep.
just had this realization recently where I was thinking about this efficiency point of view. Oh man, I lost my train of thought. um, oh yeah, I came up with. I don't know if you've seen that raid team that I use, that purple red raid team with
Mhm.
Black Knight, Garnet, Gravemaker, Freya, and Bira.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, this is the best raid team I've ever come up with. It like has over a 90% win rate. And then I was like thinking about the next hero I'd max, and I'm like, when am I even going to use this hero? I was like, what am I using for war twice a week? I was like, oh, that feels like such a waste. So I just like suddenly hit this wall of like, oh, no one that I can really max at this point will totally change my day-to-day gameplay. And it's it's like the afterlife in the game where you're like, oh, now you're making totally different decisions, where
Hmm.
like you'll max slow heroes just to use for rush attack because like you can, why not?
Yeah, I think my strategy with deciding who I was building early on was, and this probably factors into me being a mono player, is I was looking for specific heroes from each element that would have been the elemental defense down, some kind
Sure.
of regular defense down, and some kind of strong hitter and some kind of strong healer.
Still the
And then
best strategy, I think.
yeah, so then like I think once I accomplished that, my focus switched to, that's when I got into competing in the challenge events, and I really started talking about hit three heroes, which now with the new raid formations they might hit everybody, which is really cool.
Hmm.
Uh, but focusing on them gave a particular flavor to my attacks, even in raiding and war. I will still argue, and people will tell me that he's no good, but Costume Elkinen, I think, is one of the most versatile heroes, defense, attack, any challenge events, Ninja Tower, wherever. I mean, I just find Costume Elkinen surprisingly good for being a season one with a costume.
Yeah.
Uh, but I'm at that point now where I have so many heroes maxed. Like the focus is even getting finer on who gets those that last ascension.
Yeah.
So what I was about to interrupt you a bit ago, I was going to tell you because you mentioned which comes up often when people say, "Oh, I'd really like Al Freak for rush attacks in the fast wars," which is true. And but I'll tell you, there's somebody on my alliance right now who is using Al Freak on their normal attack team, and it is a healing based team. It's a drawn out team. Like the team is designed to keep everybody alive till Alfred can go off.
Yeah.
And it's kind of an interesting strategy, and they have a very high win rate, and they have a lot of fun playing with that. But it's just kind of, you're doing a boa constrictor, just kind of keeping everybody in place until
Yeah.
you can just knock the life out of them with Alfred.
Yeah, I do that with my Scotty team where she's the one who's going to win. I surround her with healers and that keeps her alive. And then she does her thing and it's over. And I've seen people use Alfrag to good effect in regular raiding with someone like Grimble. And that's a hero that I'm actually looking at maxing over heroes like a second Onyx or Ursina or Dr. Moreau because it just brings something new and versatile.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, I kind of want to see if I can build a team around using him for minion removal and then capitalizing on that mana gain with other heroes that are impactful but maybe slower. And
I,
Alfreak is perfect for that because they're in the same color. So you're working towards her while you're getting him in play, and then boom, you get a boost of mana, and then she puts a stranglehold on him.
and in the Land of Darks, and I know you mentioned her earlier, Lapiota, she is a blast. I'm actually at a point now where I keep telling myself I just need to record every game that I use her, because she is a surprising finisher.
Hmm.
I've had fights where I'm down to nothing, but I
Yeah,
have her, and I just keep hiding enemies, and I'm ghosting tiles and getting her up to speed so that I can just get more tiles under them. When they pop back alive, I can just kill them with tiles, and it's an
yeah,
interesting end game that I haven't really experienced. I think Lepiota and Tyr are my two favorite heroes to have left if I don't have anybody else left.
we'll have to come back to Tyr because I have mixed feelings about that guy.
Uh,
But yeah, Lapiota is on my short list right now. Um, and just because she seems cool, like I've always really enjoyed the mana control heroes. And going back to my oldest teams when I was making videos, one of them had Hansel on it, and I still have Hansel at 18 emblems, and I still use him every single war, and I really like him. I've just emblemed him for full defense and HP because it's not about his damage. It's about choosing one hero who's going to cause problems for me, and I stop them. I forget how many turns he lasts for, if it's 3 or 4. And I underestimated Lapiota at first. I've I don't do that too often, but I have definitely made the wrong call on heroes occasionally. Costume Catalan was another one. I didn't realize how big her impact would be, and she's just phenomenal
Mhm.
on defense primarily, I think, but she's an incredible hero. But that Lapiota is sort of like mana control, but with the benefit of being able to pass tiles through the hero that you've blocked with them, which I
Mhm.
think is often more valuable than like what Hansel does, where you just get to throw tiles into them and they can't charge. I think I'd
Right.
rather Ghost. And that's what seems particularly fun about her is I can see myself maxing her and then being like, all right, she's charged. I actually have 3 tiles underneath this hero who's not a current threat right now. But if I pull them out of the mix, I get 3 tiles through and I get these other 3 heroes charged from
Yep.
that. And then I can take out the one who maybe is the looming threat. So there's just a lot of fun stuff that it seems like
Yep.
you could do with her. I don't
Yep.
think she's the best early game hero for like versatility, but I think mid game to later game, she is a fantastic addition. Incredible stats. All the season 4 heroes have remarkable stats, and she brings something new. And I'm getting to a point where that's what I value as I'm making decisions.
Have you seen the information on Zenoba, if I'm saying that correct?
Yeah, she seems badass. That was one
Yeah.
of the ones in the early beta that I was like, that hero is ridiculous.
Yeah, that's going to be a chaser.
Yeah.
So let's come back. You did a stop there, a pause on tier. How
Yeah.
how are you conflicted on tier?
It's funny, I think everyone likes to share the videos where he wins, like he's the only one on the team and you beat a whole team of 5. So I think because people were wanting to share the most incredible outcomes they've seen with him, that it sort of inflated my expectations of what he does. And so I tried like 30 games in a row to use a team of 3 heroes with him on it and like 2 healers or something to see if I could pull something like that off. It never happened. And I was like, that's disappointing. And then as I thought about it more, it's like, well, if one hero could primarily beat a team of 5, that would be a ridiculously strong hero. Like, that's not really a reasonable expectation. But I've just never found the point where he clicks with a team that I'm using him on or what I want him to do. I have had so few of those moments where he does it on his own. And
Sure.
typically it's just like I've lost him a couple times and people thought it was hilarious in my war videos because I talked so much crap about tier and then here I was losing to tier and I was like, oh, I can't believe it.
Yeah, tier to me. Well, first of all, I would say he is capable of doing amazing things. I actually have a excuse me, I have a video that tier is a beast and just highlighting all kinds
Yeah.
of crazy things. And it's not just end games with him. I actually completed the last level, the last stage of the last province of season 1, the first big boss that we ever had. I finished
Mhm.
that whole level with just tier.
That was the
uh,
Dark Lord, right? His
yes,
first appearance.
which was, obviously some heavy weapons helped, but Tier's there by himself and reviving. I don't forget how many times he came back. But the
Hmm.
thing that I absolutely love about Tier, and maybe you haven't had that moment yet to truly appreciate it and fall in love with it, but there is a dance that you have to do with Tier at the end when he's the last one left. Because once you fire his special and he gets his wings, it's then a rush to actually set off the enemy's specials. Because there's two things you're trying to accomplish while those wings are there. One, you're trying to get their specials off so that if they kill him, he comes back. And two, you're trying to organize tiles under them so that you can do some tile damage.
Hmm.
And I've done that. I had a couple of those games just recently where he was the last person standing, and I was able to play both sides of the board between two heroes where I was just manipulating getting specials on one side, and it's kind of a volleyball match. And then as soon as one falls, it's just the second one's going to die too.
Yeah.
So he's a clutch hero in my opinion. He really pulls things out. So let's talk about another hero you mentioned. And I want to challenge you on this a little bit in a different way because I agree with you. The challenge is coming from a different place, and that's Catalan costume.
Hmm.
She's fantastic. She's great. That dodge is annoying, but yet the community really ragged on Margaret, and so did I. I couldn't stand Margaret, and she's a nature hero. She's actually very fast and dodges. And they did buff her now, so she actually does some damage. She's not just dancing around with avoiding damage. Why do you think it is that Catalan costume is so far superior over Margaret?
Um, One of the first ones is really high defensive stats. Margaret is a glass cannon, but she doesn't do the damage to justify it. So she's got this weird build of really high tile damage, really low defense, but she doesn't do much damage. So it never really made sense to me to have a hero that excels with tile damage, but doesn't do strong special skill damage because of it.
Hmm.
So that stood out to me. So Costume Catalan um, got on my radar more when I was sort of analyzing the aftermath of the final nail in Telluria's coffin. And I was like, Catalan's defense can get up to 980. And I think Telluria's was 988, if I remember correctly. So it's like, wow, that's good. And she's going off at fast speed, which is a big advantage on defense because you can feel that difference. And the thing that I like most about her, and I really, really want to see more of this in this game, and I talked about it in one of the Watchtower episodes with Lion Roar. I love how when they dodge, something happens. If you dodge, you don't take any damage and you heal by gaining a minion. That offset is so good. Not only are you not taking damage, but you have now gained HP from the exchange. So she really makes you think twice about doing anything with special skills during those 3 turns. And I believe Margaret is you dodge, you gain mana, right?
I'm not sure. I've never used her. I've criticized Margaret since day one.
Yeah, I think she's a if you dodge, you gain mana, which doesn't it can have an impact, but it's to me it's less reliable. The minion is just like you've gained HP. There's value in that. That's great. So I think it's those two things together, and that's something I really wish they would have done. I mean, a lot of people say Dr. Moreau is fine. He doesn't need anything to be better. It seems like a rare group that is not super impressed with Drake, and so a better Drake doesn't really appeal to me. Maybe I just don't have the right purples. Like if I had a Panther with lots of emblems, then I might find a team for him because those two together would do pretty good damage. But I really wish, and the same thing with Thor. You know, we we have a difference of opinion about Thor. But I really wish like the blind, if you miss, you do damage to yourself, or you put a 1-turn ailment on yourself, or something like that. Catalan stands alone, I think, as a hero who, if something already good happens, something even better happens because of it. And she's in just a very unique category because of that. So she's got a lot going for her. I think I'm glad she hasn't been featured in a while because I probably would have gone after her more than another hero. But I think she's less good on offense because I don't feel like I want to rely on the dodge to keep me alive. I'd rather approach it differently. And I also don't feel like her damage is that good. You'd have to pair her with like a Frigg or something like that to make it more impactful. So I don't know. I might max her if I got her. And then back to Margaret, if formations come to war, which I kind of hope they do in like a mandated way where everyone has to do reverse this war and everyone has to do reverse double or something, I'd probably max Margaret because like I mentioned before, I'm at that point where I can invest in heroes that have a little less utility. Because very fast dodge to all for the double formations would be pretty incredible. And it's not enough of an incentive that it's in rating because I feel like I'm in diamond forever. So it can be fun to indulge how far to get past there, but to me that's one of those places where it doesn't have enough payoff for me to give away all those rare materials.
So let's get into another topic, which we've actually been dancing around in sort of a way, and that is, and this is I think a pet peeve of both of us. I don't know if it's for the same reasons, but the players who post two heroes and say which one do I level, or they post 3 or 4. So
Yeah.
let's address this for the sake of the community once and for all as to why that is almost always a terrible question. Let's hear
Yeah.
your vantage point first. Why do you think the which hero to level is a bad question?
Sure. And the first thing I want to say is I can't fault people for wanting to know because I think
Sure.
what I see in that is like, I want to make the best decision possible, or like, I appreciate your perspective on the game and I want to know, I want some help, I want some advice. So I can't fault people for asking the question. But what I would say to those people and what I do is it's always more complicated. You know, it's like if you want to ask someone, should I go to college or should I start my own business? And it's like, I don't know anything about your life to give you advice on that, you know, because one of those is going to be better for you, but I don't know nearly enough to say it. And even there's a lot that comes down to play style, like playing the board for mono and coming up with teams, composing teams for mono is just different, and it doesn't fit the way I think about things. And maybe I've just gotten used to 3-2, and so I approach it differently. But you really have to know someone's play style pretty intimately to give them detailed advice on what they should choose. And so it kind of pains me when I get that question, because I'm like, oh man, I don't want to be that difficult person who's like, well, it depends, and that's the best answer I can give. But that really is the truth of it. It's
Sure.
like slow heroes. If people are like, hey, should I max a slow hero? I'm like, I wouldn't personally, but I know people in my alliance who love using Bertilla and don't seem to mind, even for raids. I know you love her for challenge events, but for raids and wars, and don't mind that she's slow. And I don't know that I think Albie is the only slow hero I've ever maxed, and he's he's a huge disappointment to me.
Maybe resurrecting heroes aren't your thing.
Yeah, I kind of feel like I don't want to be in the position. I felt the same way about Gramps too when he came out for season 4. I was like, he doesn't even heal.
Right.
He's slow, so I would only use him in rush attack, but I don't need. I mean, I guess in rush attack, since you don't have mono troops, having a little mono boost is helpful, because then you can get down to that 6-tile cutoff and you're not trying to match 7 tiles, which is way more awkward. But I'm also like, I don't want to be in a position where I need to resurrect. I'd
Right.
rather construct a good 3-2 team where I have 2 strong components separately. I can rely on either one for at least part of the match until the other one gets going. And so it just doesn't fit my approach. And there's people that love Albie, and I'm pretty sure you still use him. Maybe before you got Toxicondra, still use him on your green team, and you used him for a while, and lots of people love him. So I feel bad saying I wouldn't max him. And the
Yeah.
other part is I don't want to make people feel bad for pulling a hero, where they're like, would
Yep.
you max Quintus or, Marie from Pirates? And I'm like, I wouldn't max either of them personally. I know you went after Marie and created a cool resurrection team from it. But anyways, yeah, it gets into this, like, it depends. It depends on
Sure.
so much, and I won't be able to gather enough information about you to really tell you what's best. So
Yeah.
I try to give some advice, but yeah, and I think you
Yeah.
feel the same.
Yeah. And I agree with you on empathizing for why they're asking the question.
Sure.
Because especially if they're free to play or cheap to play, 4-star ascension mats are hard to come by. It is a very big decision. I think my critique is actually the question. And it's
Mm,
just, like you said, you can't just put 2 options and say which one. There's a complete lack of information to make an informed decision. I mean, from my perspective, the first question I used to always ask is for what? Which one do I level? For what?
the other thing, yeah.
Is Titans your like? What is your game goal? Do you love Titans? Do you like the challenge events? Do you just want war and rating? Like there
They're like,
needs
yeah,
to.
everything.
What's the goal that you have for your team and your hero? Emblems. If you have 2 heroes that you're on the fence, and maybe emblems will make a difference. If I have a pile of emblems for one and not the other, that might be a deciding factor. Like you said, play style. How are you going to use them? I think of the alliances that I've been in, my current alliance has some of the most diverse members as far as how they put teams together. I'm seeing more unique attack teams than I've ever seen. And they're thinking about the games in ways that I've never thought about putting teams. And I don't mean the 3-2 versus mono, or the mono. I'm talking like what's actually making up their 3-2 teams. I'm looking at some of the things they put together. I'm like, that works. Like, and then when you think about their logic, you're like, wow, that really makes sense. But for me to give somebody like that advice on which heroes level up, I would have never leveled up their heroes. Like I said, the person who has the survivability team with Alfreak coming in as a closer, that's just not a team I would build. And I don't even know I'd be comfortable playing it, because I think I'd be clenching the whole time, like
Yeah,
waiting for a nightmare to happen before I can finally fire Alfreak.
yeah,
So I think there's a lot to go into that question, which one to level.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. You raise an interesting point, which is like, for what part of the game, heroes that you might level for. And that's the reason why I want Frida. I don't participate too much in the events, but she's like an absolutely core member for any strong event team. Like, blue seems like the strongest color still. She's essential, and so, like, the Ninja Tower, I have gotten in the top 100 once, and I try and I go through a lot of items. I sent you a screenshot before. I've got a ton of battle items. on hand because I just have a bunch of excess iron, but I don't have the right heroes. I haven't prioritized that style of playing, and so it's really hard to compete with people who have or are farther in the game than I and have been able to say, oh, I've got 18 rings, I'll max Kagan to use for these teams. And if you're powering them up with a monopod, then it doesn't matter what his speed is. One
Exactly.
monopod is one charge, no matter whether you're very slow or very fast.
Hmm. Yeah, agreed. And I actually, it's complete serendipity that it happened. At the time that I started building my hit three teams to be competitive in the challenge events, that's when the Ninja Tower came, and that's when
Mm,
the raid formations came. And suddenly, these heroes I built to be strong in one thing are now incredibly powerful. I laugh at the people who are doing doubles or reverse doubles because when I go in with my 9 tile nature team, they're all hit threes, they're all fast, and then
mm.
now they're hitting five, and they just one round of specials and it's game over.
Yeah. Yeah, and you're a primarily mono player as well, which is speaks to the event strategy too. So I don't think it's worlds apart, but I do think there is a different way of approaching how you play the board if mono is your style of play. So yeah, that those things are excellent prerequisites for doing well in the events. Both pretty much all the events, Ninja Tower, Mythic Titan, challenge events. Those are all mono dominated uh, aspects of the game, and the heroes you choose for that are gonna be based on that style, which is not the way that I play the majority of the game.
Yep. So here's another one that people don't always necessarily ask when they say which hero to level up. It's very important and relevant if they're free to play or cheap to play or pay to play. Because if
Hmm.
somebody said to you, Mr. Spock, do I level up Quintus or Mokar?
Hmm.
Would that not matter if they're free to play or pay to play?
Yeah. Or if they're mono, I would say, well, Makar is definitely better because you don't have the negative side of it, you know?
Sure. And my
Yeah.
point, I think, with the pay to play was my advice to them if they're pay to play is not necessarily level either of them.
Oh yeah,
You're
wait.
gonna pull somebody else. But if
Yeah.
you're free to play and these are the two that you happen to have, that then those are your choices. And
Yeah.
it might be worth exploring which one's going to be best for you in your situation.
Yeah.
So yeah, so folks out there, go ahead and ask the question. Just ask it in a more informed way. Give us more feedback on what you want to be doing with your game.
I think the perfect analogy to send it home and to end this point on is like it's kind of like going to a restaurant with a stranger and they're like, "What should I order?" And you're like, I don't know. Are you vegetarian? Are you like I know nothing about what you like or what your interests are. And so to give advice there is really challenging. And so I think that maybe is a more relatable experience that people are like, oh, if it's like that, I can see how that is really difficult to give advice because I wouldn't know how to answer that question either.
Sure, that's actually a really good metaphor that you could work out because it also works in the free to play versus pay to play. Like,
Yeah,
you don't want to recommend the expensive thing on the item if they can't afford it.
exactly.
And the emblems would be equivalent to like condiments and spices. Like, I don't know what condiments and spices you have, so I'm not going to tell you to emblem this, and you don't have
Yeah,
the seasonings to go with it.
there you go.
So, yeah, that metaphor could probably be pulled way out.
Yeah,
So let's switch gears completely,
sure.
and let's talk about um, how you and I both do some version of testing heroes or pointing out
Hmm.
the new kids on the block in some way.
Sure, yeah.
Um, so I tend to chase, and I realize I pay to do that, and then I do my test drive videos, and I get that people criticize them that I'm not more diligent about testing each facet of the hero. But to me, and just so everybody's clear, when I do a test drive video, it is literally test drive. If I went out to test drive a car, I want to go out and bang the gears, squeal some tires, and see what I can get out of that car. So I throw them into the team that I would normally play on one of my mono teams, and I just go out and kind of wreak havoc and see what they do.
Mhm.
And I do realize that does not give players or viewers the opportunity to see the individual damage that they do when they just fire themselves. And I think that's a different kind of information for us to use.
Sure.
So I'm comfortable doing what I do, and I'm comfortable with the critique that comes out. You
Mhm.
handle the test drive in a very different way.
Yeah,
So do you want to talk a little bit about your methodology and how that came to be?
yeah. I think to put it most simply, I try to create the video that I would want if I was looking for information.
Mhm.
So I remember when Kill Hair first came out, and I don't know how long that's been now, but it's been quite a while. And I mean, I guess it's been a year, right? It was last time around. Um, but I remember looking at 300% damage and being like, I don't exactly know what that looks like. And I was like, I guess Ursina does what, 260 or something, so it's a little bit stronger than that, but it was like hard for me to conceptualize what that would look like. And I had no idea what the damage would be if you maxed her emblems or if you maxed her troops or when you factor in the defensive bonus, all these things. And I was like, I don't know. So my approach is to try to find the heroes on defense as strong as I can find them. And I seem to have weirdly good luck with finding plus 20 versions of them with often very high level troops, which is perfect. But my goal, and I still see comments of people being like, oh, well, of course you beat that team because look how good your team is. And I'm like, my point is not to show that I can win.
Mhm.
Any team can beat any team with the right board. What I'm trying to do with these videos, and this speaks to your question exactly, is to show people as many aspects of the hero as possible in as many contexts as possible so they can look at this and go, yeah, I want to max this hero. This one I think is better than this other one for what I want them to do, and this is the choice I'm going to make. So if you can see that Killhair with max attack path on defense with level 30 troops does 550 damage or whatever, you know what the ceiling is on her special. That's the best you can expect it to be. I suppose a level 30 ninja troop would be a little bit higher in terms of damage, but it clarifies immediately what she's capable of in a way that is much more relatable than trying to extrapolate from the percentage on the card. Or like Frost, for example, who just came out. What does a 13% or whatever his percentage HP boost look like? So I found a team with him that also had a bunch of other minion heroes. So that was kind of a dual video where it was like, here's a fun team featuring this guy, and trying to show people this is what he'll do to minions. This is the impact he will have. This is how much it looks like when he gains mana. So trying to look at all the aspects of that hero and show each of those in a real context so people can say, oh, that's what it looks like. That's the best I can expect to see. Cool. You know?
Yeah, I forget where I was on the internet the other day, but I came across a post where somebody was actually talking about you and I, and
Yeah.
it was in a flattering, positive way. And they were saying somebody was critiquing about not being able to find good information about heroes, and they
Mhm.
said, well, if you look at Empires and Puzzles books, he does these test drives. You can see him on attack, and if you go watch Mr. Spock, you can go and see how they are in defense.
Pretty
Um,
perfect.
so let's compare, and I'm going to open a can of worms here because I'm very comfortable opening cans of worms. So let's compare and contrast our take on how to explore new heroes versus others who may just read the card and offer a grade and an evaluation just based on the card.
Yeah. The first thing that comes to mind is like the community is small enough that there is some value to releasing a video quickly because you kind of saturate some of the curiosity people have about this hero. That being said, I think for channels that are more developed, people will still watch, even if they've seen one of our videos, will still probably watch the other because one, we all have different and kind of complementary perspectives on the game. So there is some overlap for sure, but we each approach it very uniquely. Um, so I think some of the like read the card thing is like trying to get out there quickly, capitalize on the excitement around this, but it's not my favorite style because it leaves a lot of the important pieces off the table. Like it does provide something because if you're an inexperienced player, certain things on that you would read on the card might not stand out to you. Like, for example, Phileas Fogg, the new season 4 5-star, I recently maxed, and I liked that he was both a fighter class and his passive ability let him take less damage. So it's like this guy is very survivable. He's built like a glass cannon, but he has the features to make up for that. And I think in the right team, so what I've been testing out is him with Kingston and Toxicandra. After they all fire, the next ghost one match, and they're all ready again. And I love that. So I think there is value to reading the card, but it's not again, it's not what I would want to see, and that's where I make the videos that I would want to
Sure.
find. But I think that's my takeaway, is that it's kind of like being first, but maybe not giving as much depth as there can be given on something. Does your opinion align with that, or do you have a different take on it?
No, I'm in line with that too. I mean, no matter how we do it, there's some subjectivity, right? Like I said, I own the critiques that people give with the way I do my test drives. That I'm still blowing them away with defense down, elemental defense down, and then they come in and they just really seem super impressive and they do their damage.
Mhm.
Um, so that is subjective on my part. I think critique of the card readers is there's the subjectivity to, again, what kind of player are they? What kind of heroes are they looking for? So, I mean, I guess maybe the best answer is people review all the material and make an informed decision. Just, like you were buying a new car or going
Yeah.
to a restaurant and you're trying to select a meal, as you use the example, you want to get as much information as you can.
Mhm.
Um, I just, my concern with the card reading is that ultimately that ends at a path of hero grading, which often does not match real world experience. Like there's a
Yeah.
bunch of hero graders out there, and I caution people from following those grades on making very important decisions, because there's heroes that I've seen rated poorly in the grading systems that top the charts when you actually get to events. Yeah, again, one of my favorites, Costume Helkinen. He is rarely ever rated anything above a B or something like that. And okay, he's a B hero, but I'm going to keep winning and taking lots of loot and prizes using that B hero. So,
Mhm.
there's what was that other one? There was, I think one version of Lai Zhu was rated really poorly for 4-star events, and she's in a vast majority of the top playing teams. You'll see Lai Zhu often in 4-star tournaments. So I think there's sometimes the card can only tell us so much.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
who you're using them with and how you pair them together can totally change the dynamic of a hero. Uh, you know, um, God, I always hate to even go near these heroes because of the drama that comes with it. But if you
Let's
go
do it.
back to the Teluria Vila Gravemaker,
Mhm.
um, I think if you got rid of the other two, if you got rid of Gravemaker and Teluria, I don't know that Vila would have ever needed or even been a conversation about nerfing her. I don't know that on her own she was that fantastic. Um,
She she's the one that I was covering all the stuff when it was happening and sharing my opinions, and she's the one that I was most bothered by because she came out first, if I remember correctly. I think she was January and Telaria was February, something like that, or February and March.
yeah, it was
Um,
February, March, I think. Yeah.
yeah, and Vela just got destroyed because of how she made Telaria stronger. And that was really unfortunate because one, it ruined a cool synergy. And maybe not ruined, but it diminished a good synergy. And two, I I labored over the decision to max Vela for like a week or two because I had Vela and Fenrir, and I wasn't super excited about either, but I finally made the decision to max Vela because I was like, her extra damage to red is great. And that makes up for the fact that the other stuff is less significant. I think she was doing 70% extra damage.
Mhm.
And I didn't feel like she was too strong. I felt like she was good and I was happy with her. And she just got ruined. I stripped her. I don't ever use her anymore. Plenty of people do. And she's actually one of the most annoying heroes to face with my red purple team because it's so based on minion damage and she just ignores all of it. But yeah, so that you brought up a very key point and why I personally don't like the grading system, because it's an overgeneralization and it doesn't take player style into account. It doesn't take context into account, whether you're talking about events, titans, even though the grades do reflect some of those areas. I don't feel like they do it justice. And Elkinen's a good example, costume Elkinen. Um, but yeah, it's an overgeneralization and it doesn't take hero synergy into account. And even people in my alliance will ask me, which hero should I max? And my best advice at this point in time is think about what team you might put them in and see who would be better. So it leaves out the context of the game because it's just, you'd have to take 30 minutes giving advice to someone to gather all the necessary information, and that's just too much time to spend. Um, but synergy is what it's all about. And that's what I think this new green team that I was talking about, I have really been enjoying lately, or what I call a green team, which is a 3-2
Mhm.
green purple. It's really fun because I don't know if you watched in my earlier videos the Death Star team I had, as I called it, which
Mhm.
was 2 jackals and guardian gazelle.
Mhm.
And once I had them all going, it's like the weaker jackal followed by the stronger one, pretty much a guaranteed kill, did like 1,500 damage, and then ghost a match and it's up and running again. I'm just blowing up one hero at a time with one ghosted match. And it was, woefully squishy. And so it was really hard to use against certain teams because if the board didn't cooperate at first, Jackal's got like 500 defensive stat or something. So he's going down quick. And then it falls apart when I don't have both of them. So this is kind of like the next step up from that with Fog to put the defensive down to 1. And this is a rating team. This is not an event team. It would be terrible in events. It's a rating team and it's a war team. And those I enjoy the PvP, direct PvP stuff like that the most. So you fire Fog and then Kingston and then Toxicondra. So now you have her mana gain with Kingston's element link that gives 4% more. And even with level 11 mana troops, I think one ghosted match, they're all ready to go again. And so I can, with a lot more survivability, take out one hero at a time. And then I have Costume Regard and Hell, who can control things if I don't have greens to start. And so it's been a very functional team for me. As long as there's like one blue hero decently exposed, I'll take that team with me just in the off chance I can kill the blue early.
Mhm.
That team does surprisingly well. And why? Because it has a very well balanced synergy. Even switching Kingston for Liana and losing that 4% mana gain for greens, you don't get the one ghosted match and everyone's charged. You have to wait a whole another turn for that boost to come in again. So synergy is absolutely key, and that's my advice for how to choose a hero. Like you would probably say, think about what area of the game you'd use them in, and think about what team would they be in. What would contribute to some heroes that you don't have a team for yet?
So when you were just talking about piecing together the mana from a couple heroes to make things work and to speed things up, I
Yeah.
want to connect that back. Earlier, you had made a comment about we were talking about Gramps and the 3 stars and the 4 stars and not having mana troops. Are
Mm.
you aware of the trick to get the 3s and 4s to fire in 6 tiles on a very fast 3 or 4 star event?
No.
Okay, well, great new information for you and maybe for everybody else. You can
Yeah.
get some 3 and 4 star heroes to fire in 6 tiles because there is a way to cheat the mana system on 3s and 4s. So
Is it emblems?
what's that?
Is it emblems?
You have to have emblems on. It's only the 3 classes that offer the 4% mana gain, and you need to have it on a costume hero because that gives you the 5. So the 5 and the 4 is 9%, and that gets you down to 6 tiles.
Oh, that's
So
clever.
the one that I use most often is Belith, the 3 star healer. So I have her at maxed emblems, and she's costumed, so I can get her firing at 6 tiles. But you have to watch which side of the card because it's only the class that has the 4% mana.
Yeah.
So I think it's druid, sorcerers, and,
I think Rogue.
and
But no,
maybe
no, no, no. Rogue and Ranger are the ones that get it early, but that's only
yeah.
2%. Monk gets 4% at the end.
Yep. Then that's the other one. Yep.
Yeah, that's great.
What?
No, I hadn't thought about that. I've never gone the route of adding emblems to 3 and 4 star heroes for tournaments, just because there's usually always a 5 star that I'm more excited about and
Sure.
I use them more frequently. I mean, if you look at the winning teams, they're always emblemed. And if
Mhm.
they started rewarding for scores above just top 1%, then I might get more into that. But it's kind of my approach to Mythic Titan as well, is I aim for one big hit where I use scrolls and all that kind of stuff to start and get my top 1% single hit. And then pretty much I can use all my flags and I just cycle through my different Titan teams and then I can hit top 1% that way as well. And, my alliance, we end up around top 250 maybe. So 100 would be a big push because I think the competition gets exponentially higher the further up you get. So I'm just kind of riding that sweet spot. Same thing with our alliance ranking. We're like about 400 the last time I checked. And I'm cool with that because once you get to the top, that's where things get really crazy because you're with all the bigger spenders and you've got a full team of Alfreich and Rush War. And I'm like, I don't want that kind of headache.
I'm there sometimes. I assure you, you don't.
I know. Just that's the thing that I see people in some of these line groups that I'm in complaining about the most. And I think, and even Lion Roar was like, oh, I'm kind of slowing down on Empires and Puzzles. And I was like, consider joining our alliance. I think that the top 100 really, or maybe top 50. I've never been up there to see exactly how far that range extends, but I think it chews you up, and I think you're amongst, and I don't mean this in a negative way, just in sort of sort of an outlier way. You're amongst kind of the freak players who have the most crazy rosters, the highest level troops, and that's a tough spot to be. It's like I don't know if you ever played Mario Kart, but sort of once you end up in the pack, it's like better to be in first place. This is a slight exception, but it's like sort of when you're in this certain pack, everyone has the best items in this pack, and you're constantly getting hit and falling behind, and it's sort of how it feels. Or like in the cartoons when you have people in that fight cloud that's like rolling past and people getting sucked into it.
Yep.
It's how the top 100 feels. It's just like it seems like a meat grinder.
Yep.
And I think I would enjoy the game a little bit less personally, not to say that everyone feels this way, but I'd enjoy it a little bit less if it was like so harsh like that all the time.
Well, this has been absolutely fantastic. I appreciate you being available as a resource.
Yeah.
Would it be fair to say that our mutual viewers can probably anticipate more from the two of us and a combined effort moving forward?
Yeah, I'd love to do that. Yeah, it's been fun talking, and we've kind of bounced back and forth comments at times and email for a little bit. But yeah, I enjoy this format, and I think while we approach a lot of things very differently, there's enough overlap to create some interesting content around looking at different features, or maybe even the complementary nature of the way we look at it. It gives a more full picture across the board. So yeah, I'm definitely open to that.
Yeah, I would say our styles are like the game. There isn't usually one right answer.
Sure, yeah.
Unless it's elemental defense down. Elemental defense down is always the right answer. But otherwise, everything else is situational and dependent on all of those factors we've been talking about throughout this conversation.
And it's all about what's fun for you. We mentioned at one point where I don't like the challenge events, and I don't compete in them just because that thing doesn't appeal to me. But that's not true for a lot of people. And like, so there's no one way to play the game, is what I'm trying to say. Find what you like and dial into that. And one more piece of advice I want to throw in for people is find an alliance that's matched with your skill level and your roster. You'll enjoy the game so much more if there's some balance and harmony between the people in your alliance and the types of alliances you're facing. If you try to join a super strong alliance with a weak roster, you're going to be hitting 14-star Titans, and you're going to be doing terrible, and you're going to be hitting really strong war teams, and it's not going to be fun. So if you can find that sweet spot, you'll enjoy the game so much more.
Yeah, find the space to grow.
Yeah.
Good advice. Good advice. Well, again, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you being as available as you've been for the entire community, both on your channel and now on this interview.
Yeah.
So we look forward to hearing more from Mr. Spock moving forward. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, well, this will be a battle of YouTube. Empires and Puzzle Books takes on Mr. Spock. I'm grateful for the Black Knight tank. My ice team enjoys them. He does have this incredibly troublesome Odin and Frigg flanks, which I think is part of this new psychological meta that's going on, because it messes with us to try to figure out our attack while we're simultaneously trying to figure out how to get rid of nature and holy tiles on the board at the same time. I know this is effective because I'm using it in my defense as well. So when he gets to revenge me, he'll have to deal with the same thing. So we're going to go in first with my ice team and see how this goes. And that is not a bad board at all. So we'll start off with a blue diamond. I think this is going to go quickly. Finley is a pain, so we're going to go ahead and get rid of Finley. And Odin. All right. My Magni just got up to 907 for his attack. He has 1 node to go, so he will get up to 930 for his total attack. So I'm going to do a very Mr. Spocky kind of thing to do. I'm going to go ahead and flee, even though I have the 1 game, because I want to go ahead and try to attack him again. So let's go ahead and give him that win. And we're going to rematch. And let's go in with my fire team and see how the fire team will go. No luck stacking a little more fire on the board. Let's get rid of some of these nature tiles. Spot this. Go for your direct damage. It's worth seeing what else is out there. Alright, thank God he didn't take care of Mitsuko, because we'll be using Mitsuko to get rid of Finley. Let's get Finley up to speed. This will take out Frigg. And Finley should take out himself. Four to 2. I like this math. Give me a red tile. Perfect.